If, and there is a fairly decent chance that this is true of you, that you've never heard of this movie, I reckon you would probably be able to guess which year this movie came out just from hearing the words surf and ninjas. I would say you'd likely be within a 5-year margin at least. This came out in 1993, and if you've guessed that, well done. And if you've looked at the little bit at the bottom of the screen, also well done, because by putting that date there, I've really let down the whole point of the beginning of this video. Oops. If I was brave enough to incur the wrath of YouTube's copyright ferrets, I would play the sound of the movie's trailer, which would certainly sound exactly how you'd expect. Think the inner monologue of Michelangelo the Ninja Turtle. It's all radical and bodacious, babes. That kind of shtick. Surf Ninjas was a 1993 family-targeted comedy kung fu action flick distributed by New Line Cinema. It tells the story of two Los Angeles teenagers, Johnny and Adam, who love indulging in putting feet upon wood upon the waves of the Pacific, or in simpler terms, they like surfing. First bit of the movie title, tick. Ninjas, second bit of the movie title, tick, attack the boys and their friend Iggy, whereupon they are saved by a warrior called Zatch. Shortly afterwards, their father is kidnapped, and it is discovered that they're actually the descendants of the warrior rulers of a mythical and mystical country called Potosan, which has been overthrown by the villainous Colonel Chi. Being descendants of magical warriors, the two boys find that they have abilities that will help them in their quest to rescue their father, free the beautiful princess Romay, and overthrow Chi. Johnny becomes a martial arts master, while Adam has a magical, yes, Game Gear, which shows him exactly what's going to happen in their adventure, and that he can influence events by interacting with the game on his Game Gear. More on this a little bit later. Father and son team Ernie Reyes Sr. and Ernie Reyes Jr. play Zatch and Johnny respectively, who perform a lot of the martial arts moves and choreographed a lot of the movie. US comedic pair Rob Schneider and Leslie Nielsen, they take turns in chewing the scenery as Iggy and the villainous Colonel Chi. Surf Ninjas received dismal reviews from the critics, with the score on review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes sitting at 23% from 22 critics' reviews. The box office was also a stinkeroony, with just a $4.9 million domestic return from a budget of $6.5 million. Some of that money donated by Sega, because back to the Magic Game Gear, New Line Cinema and Sega of America had a financial relationship for this movie, with this ultimately being sort of a multimedia project. You see, the Game Gear game began production at the same time as the scripting for the movie. Sega received creative input from director Neil Israel and screenwriter Dan Gordon, with sequences that would match the movie with the game. The character Adam is shown constantly influencing the movie from his Game Gear, although the game in the movie looks very different to the finished product. Still, it's quite interesting, and the game itself actually came out before the movie by a couple of weeks. A Mega Drive game was also planned, but cancelled after Sega realised that they backed a dud, and there's no point in throwing good money after bad. Now, it would be remiss of me to not at least mention the Flare Software Amiga and CD32 title at this stage, which notably could not be more different from its Game Gear counterpart in terms of its relationship with the movie makers. I don't think Flare Software, based in North East England, probably had much interaction with New Line Cinema beyond seeing maybe the script. Johnny, the teenage inexperienced surfer warrior, is replaced by an unnamed wall of meat 80s action movie star who stomps around punching ninjas, fetching copies of Flare Software's soccer superstars for Los Angeles diners, who I'm sure would definitely require a substandard European soccer game that I hadn't even heard of before I did this review. And moreover, ripping out the innards of his adversaries. It is both hilariously misjudged and uproariously terrible, and has a legendary status that few CD32 titles can claim they have. Well done, Flare Software, for this absolute stinker-poo. The Game Gear game was programmed by New FX Incorporated, who had a hand in several Game Gear and Mega Drive titles that were licensed, such as Beavis and Butthead, Tasmania, and the previously covered Crew Ball. We've got a 2D platform-based beat-em-up here, with the hero being Ernie Reyes Jr.'s Johnny on his voyage of violent self-discovery. Along 6 stages, Johnny will scuffle with all manner of wildlife such as rats, birds, tigers, along with the movie's cadre of ninja bastards and goons galore. He can defend himself with a surprisingly large range of martial arts manoeuvres that are mapped onto the solitary attack button. You can access the different attacks and rolls and jumping attacks by pressing up and down, and obviously jump as well, with your attack button jabs. There is a double jump that you will need to utilise in order to get to higher places, but this is very clunky to use and will take a while to get used to. It has certainly been done better elsewhere, and that can be applied to the attacks too. I appreciate there's only 2 buttons, and there is a decent amount of what you can do with that limited duo of buttons, but it has been done better elsewhere. It is unresponsive and sloppy. The game is full of secrets which can only be accessed with the aid of Adam and his Game Gear when you ask for hints, and you get this nice little animated sequence that shows him having a look at the old Game Gear. These aren't just for gaining power-ups and the like, but is actually an essential part of the game, because on the 4th stage you must find a magical sword which is required, and I will emphasise this again, required to defeat Colonel Chi. If you miss it, you can carry on in the game, but we'll only find out at the end of the game that you will need to have this magical sword to put an end to Chi's nonsense. There is absolutely no way to go back and get it. At that point, you will have to reset the game and start from the beginning. I think this was potentially the cause of a few broken 1994 era Game Gears as they made contact with bedroom walls. It was a poor choice by New FX. It was a poor choice indeed. Graphics and sound are adequate, with nice use of backdrops and colour, and some decent tunes that do sway a little too far into the repetitive after a while. From a gameplay point of view, those controls and missable secrets really do have an effect and are a dark mark against what is otherwise a fairly decent Shinobi-esque title. There are some really good ideas here, some real creative choices, like using Adam to help you with hints, but ultimately it's just been delivered rather poorly. Oh, and I should say that Ernie Reyes Sr., as in the character Zach, can be utilised as a smart bomb should you run into trouble. Using your own dad as a smart bomb truly is a thing of playground fables. Reviews of the time, well, they were lukewarm. GamePro reviewed it in August 1993. Attractive screens and clever details aren't enough to save this fighting game. Average control and easy to beat villains essentially dash Surf Ninja on the rocks. They gave it a 65 out of 100. EGM, well, they reviewed it a month before, that being July. It received an overall score of 28 out of 40 from them. While not exactly the best out there, Surf Ninja does have some serious arcade action, is what they said about that. As for me, well, I want to use the era's vernacular to review it, but find the words bodacious and heinous to be a bit too extreme. It was the 90s, everything was extreme. So I guess it's just totally fine, dude. I'm too old to do that sort of thing. Anyway, like, subscribe, okay, thanks, bye.